Hello, Deanna here, and thanks so much for being here. So today's video, I am going to be sharing some of my favorite rereads. So I am a notorious rereader. If I like a story enough, I have definitely been known to pick that book back up and reread it. And there are quite a few books that I have done this a number of times. Some of them are my comfort reads and some of them are my guilty pleasures. So I wanted to go ahead and share some of these comfort reads with you, some of these rereads with you, and let you know my favorite rereads. Perhaps you see some of them here and you might recognize a couple, perhaps not, but I am going to go ahead and go through them with you and go through my favorite rereads. These are in no particular order. There's probably a couple that I do reread a little more than others, and we'll get to that. But starting off with the first one, in no particular order, we've got The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants by Anne Brashares. This is definitely one that has been a reread for me. I have reread this one a few times. Typically this is the one I reread, though sometimes when you pick up this first one, you just gotta finish the whole series as well. But this is definitely one where I love the four main characters. We've got Carmen, we've got Libby, we've got Bridget, and we've got Lena. And I absolutely love going back into this world and this friendship of these four girls who find a magical pair of pants that magically fit all of them, even though they all have different unique body types, and they spend their first summer apart from each other since they were babies, and they use the traveling pants as a way to keep connected with each other and keep each other informed of each other's lives. So this is just a feel-good story. It's a best friend story. It's just a story about loyalty and love and companionship and really having your best friend's backs. Another one that is actually a pretty new read to me. I only just read it in about the last year, but since having read it within the last year or so, I've already read it again, and I'm actually on another reread as well because it's just such a fun and delightful book. And that is Howls Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. And as you can see, there is my little bookmark because I am rereading it again. This one we follow Sophie on a journey. Sophie has been cursed, unfortunately, and she ends up taking refuge in Howls Moving Castle. It's a hilarious book. There's also a beautiful movie by Studio Ghibli. The movie is fantastic, very different in a lot of ways from the book, though just as magical and whimsical and wonderful. And this is definitely one where if I want to get lost in a bit of a world and just see some magical adventures happen and have a very strong female character in a lot of ways. In the movie, kind of not as much, but in this book, I find Sophie hilarious. She's kick butt, take no prisoners kind of attitude. She is strong and fierce and fantastic as she goes through her journey of trying to break her curse. Like, Howl himself is amazing. Michael is wonderful. Calcifer is hilarious. You've got such a wonderful cast of characters in this story, and it's a nice middle grade level story that I just absolutely love, and love just stepping into this world and going on an adventure again. So wish me luck as I reread it again and just get to fall more and more in love with these characters. So my next book, again in no particular order, we've got The Nanny Diaries by Emma McLaughlin and Nicola Kraus. This is, I don't know, this is just one that for some reason I am drawn to it again and again. I've read it quite a few times. I think I just love some of the relationship between our main character Nan and the little boy that she takes care of, Grayer, known as Grover. I love their dynamic. I love just seeing some of the sassiness and craziness of Mr. and Mrs. X, who put all these expectations on Nan. And I just love kind of stepping into this world of like the Upper East Side elite rich people who maybe you would never really see that in real world. At least in my real world, I've never been to New York even. So this I find sometimes is a nice way to step into like a really weird version of New York, or at least a very foreign version of New York that would be available to me. And I have loved this since I was young. I think I got this way back when it first came out, back in like 2002. Actually, happy anniversary to the Nanny Diaries, as it is celebrating 20 years being published. So I've read this for about 20 years, probably off and on over the years, here and there taking breaks from it. But it has been a fun book that I've read throughout my life, and I have just enjoyed stepping into the character of Nan and seeing what she goes through. Kind of like, it's a bit of her coming of age in some ways, because she's going through university, she's trying to figure out where she fits in the world, and then she's also taking on all these other tasks and responsibilities. I love the movie as well. I've seen the movie a couple times, but there are quite a few stark differences between the movie and the book that I do tend to gravitate towards the book more, because I feel like the book just feels a little more authentic than the nice wrapped bow at the end of the movie. But this is definitely one of my most comfort reads. I have read this quite a few times over the years. So the next book, we've got Confessions of a Shopaholic, or I think it's also known as like the Dream World of a Shopaholic, depends on where you get it published, but it's from Sophie Kinsella. And this book, let me tell you, this book is loved, definitely. This whole series is one of my favorite series. Sophie Kinsella is one of my favorite authors. I find her just such a delight to read. I know what kind of characters I'm getting into. Sometimes her books are very similar, at least the ones that I've read, like Can You Keep a Secret, and I think The Undomesticated Goddess and things like that. I do find that the characters are very similar. They're like these women who are smart but kind of not always taken seriously, and they just have a lot of similar traits almost, I feel. So you do get that a lot with Sophie Kinsella, at least with the books that I've read. But I also find that very comforting in a lot of ways too, especially the series of Becky Bloomwood. I've read her whole series quite a few times, but this one is the one I go to the most. I just love that frantic first scene when she is trying to like figure out what to do about her spending habits and how much she shops, and she's going through a credit card bill, and she gets distracted and it just spirals from there. And just wild as Becky Bloomwood is, she tends to bring a lot of what she has on herself. Like, it's just her own, just she says one thing and then it just snowballs into all these different things, and she's trying to keep her lies straight and stuff. But it's also just so fun. I love the character of Luke Brandon, and just I love their dynamic with each other, how they play off of each other. I love Becky's mom and dad. They're hilarious, and scenes with them in the book are always fun too. And it's just a delight in so many ways of this book, and that's why it's definitely one of my most loved. I mean, I've even got some little sticker of Mickey Mouse for some reason. Like, this is a loved book, and it's definitely one of my most loved books. All right, this next one, I'm just gonna say, you just have to forgive me for this. It's a very big guilty pleasure. I know a lot of people don't like this book. I know people have their opinions about it. It's a bit of a trashy novel. I understand that, but I still enjoy it. I still pick it up a couple times here and there. I've picked it up a few times and read it, and that's 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. I know it's pretty much like over glorified. It's not anything for anyone to want to aspire in a relationship. The relationship is toxic. The just Christian Grey sometimes, but I don't know. I do find myself sometimes wanting to just read Anna's adventure again, get into these two characters' world, and just see what happens with them both. This one I don't reread as much as some of the others on this list. I do feel that this one, I definitely have to be in that kind of frame of mind. It is a bit of smut reading in a lot of ways, and there are or not chapters, but there are paragraphs where I will just skip whole paragraphs because I'm just like, yeah, get back to like the story. Though the plot, the story, yeah, it's all very questionable. I completely agree with any of the criticisms of this book, and that's where I don't take this book seriously. I just think sometimes I'm in a bit of a smutty mood. Let's throw on some 50 Shades of Grey, because for some reason I can get inside the mind of Anna very well, just get lost in this book. So I don't tend to read the rest of them as much. I actually have only really read this one multiple times. I think I've read the two other ones a handful of times, if that, but I do read this one a lot. And as you can see, at some point I picked it back up. I picked this one back up to read it again, and clearly I just got disinterested or distracted on something else, because I don't even know when I was last reading this. So it's just one. Sometimes I do like to reread the 50 Shades of Grey. This one I think is one that I have reread it a few times. It's a bit of a harder one sometimes to get into because of some of the just nature of this book. I'm just gonna pull it up. It's The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I love this book so much. I love the writing of this book. I love the story. To me, it's a little harder to get into because it is got a lot of like sadness woven through it. It can really make me upset sometimes reading this book, just like Rue and just everything that happens in this book. So it's not really a pleasure read in a lot of ways. It's not like a comfort read. It's more like I really love this book and I want to go check out Katniss and get into Katniss's brain again and go see Peeta and all of, Gabe and all of the wonderful people and go and fight in the Hunger Games again. Like, that's kind of where I pick up this one. And I think it's just because Suzanne just does such a great job in her storytelling. She does a great job in her writing. Like, this is a phenomenal book. It's probably one of my most favorite books of all time. And it's definitely one that I do revisit often, maybe not as often as some of the others on the list, but it is one that I do love revisiting because it is so well done. All right, we are down to my last two top rereads. This book right here, you are going to see a bit. You're gonna see how it's pretty loved. It's pretty loved. It's pretty worn and torn in some ways. And that, if you can't read that, but it is Twilight. Again, I have heard all the voicings. I've heard what people have said about this book, and it's, to me, just one that, as you can see, it's been pretty well loved by me. I love this as a guilty pleasure. This, actually, I will read much more than I would read the 50 Shades of Grey. I mean, this one is one that I love the story. I know that Edward is frustrating sometimes. He's a bit almost over the top and a little creepy in some ways. And I know that Bella is just like, oh my God, she's so like, and just everything. But I still just love it. I don't know if it's just a nostalgia thing or what, but I really do love this book. And I think it's probably this one and maybe New Moon are the two that I read the most. But it's definitely this one. Like, as you can see, I think there's a comfort in kind of knowing what's going to happen. It's a comfort in kind of liking that world, liking kind of the magic of it and the mystery, and finding it again and going through it again. It is just one that I do pick up time and again. So I would say that I have read this one quite a few times with Bella and Edward and the Cullens and all of that good stuff. This has definitely been well loved. Now, I know at the beginning I said that this was in no order at all, but this is the #1 reread book of all time. I read this book when I was 12 years old, was when I first read this book, and I have probably read this book 50 billion, thousand, trillion, billion times. This is my most loved book in my whole collection. It is the book that I can just transport right to this world. I'm sorry, I'm staring at the book too, because I just love it. Like, I don't even have to pull up the dust jacket for you. This is a hardcover book, but I don't have to pull up the dust jacket. Oh, I can't speak. I don't have to pull up the dust jacket for you because it's right there on this book. And I think it just makes me love this book that much more. Like, clearly I love the world of Hogwarts and Harry, and just, I feel like when I read this book, I feel sometimes like I am 12 years old again, and I am back reliving the world of Harry for the first time again. Like, I'm very much a rereader where sometimes I forget certain details, and it will sometimes be like I am rereading the book for the first time. This one maybe not as much, because there's probably some parts that I could almost have it memorized in my brain, because I just love the story so much. I just absolutely connect with Harry on so many levels. I always had Harry as my most favorite character. Hermione, of course, is like neck and neck with him, but Harry is ultimately my favorite character of the series because I always just connected with him the most. I felt a lot of what he felt in that bullying stuff going on and just things that were happening. I felt so much a connection with Harry, and I absolutely just love this book. I cannot rave about the Harry Potter series enough. I definitely have read that whole 7 books. I love the 7 books. I have reread probably this one and the 3rd book are probably the ones I've reread the most, though this one is like hands down the most ever, all of them. It is a quick read too. Like, it's so short of a read for me. Like, it's such a small book, and it's written in such a nice way. Like, it's kind of that middle grade kind of style where it's really easy to fly through it really quickly, and I'm just always in love with him going and just seeing that magical new world, finding out that he's a wizard. Like, all of that is so much fun, and it is definitely #1 on my list of my favorite rereads. I will reread this book forever and ever, for all time, as long as I possibly can. This always sits predominantly in the #1 spot on my bookshelf. I absolutely love the Harry Potter series, much like many individuals who first found a love for reading through Harry Potter, though I was already well into reading at 12 years old by the time I found Harry Potter. But I just absolutely adore this book, adore all the characters, adore the world, and this is my most favorite book of all time, and the book that I have reread the most in any books that I own. So there we have it. That was my video about my most favorite rereads that I ever reread, my most favorite comfort reads, and some of my guilty pleasure like reads. These are the books that no matter what, I can usually turn to these again and again, get lost in the stories, enjoy the stories, and have a wonderful time with these books. So what about you? I would love to know, are there any books that you reread the most? Are there any that is your number one go-to book, your comfort book, one that maybe sparks some nostalgia or feel-good feels for you, that anytime you pick that book up, you're transported and you just love going to that world? Let me know. I'd love to hear it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe there's some books on my list that you enjoy as well. I'd love to hear it below. And with that, I'm gonna say thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and you will see me next time. Bye!